the visual novel. A medium that is so often ignored for the more attractive options on a never-ending backlog. But I, as a JRPG fan, also find a great deal of satisfaction from them. Though gameplay is usually limited, I'm often engrossed in the adventures that these novels convey. And that's the thing. When I look back at a great JRPG experience, I invariably always go back to the story as the highlight, the elements which allowed me to enjoy it the most. And a storybook, whether it be visual or physical, is no exception to that rule. Not this is just my notes. I'm holding it to look intellectual. It's a sad reality though that visual novels as a genre are typically more niche than your standard PC or console experience. So that ultimately begs the question, can this genre evolve and modernise itself to the point where it can push itself into the minds of people who would generally overlook it? Maybe it can. This is 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim. Originally released in November 2019 in Japan, it eventually found its way west in September of 2020 as a PS4 exclusive. Developed by Vanillaware, who some may know as the minds behind Odin Sphere, and published by Atlus. While at its core it's remained a visual novel, Aegis Rim quickly gained attention for its ambitious design and captivating yet recognisable art style, synonymous with previous works from Vanillaware. And though I wasn't able to play this in 2020, I made it a personal mission of mine to do so in 2021, lodging it straight onto my backlog for the year. About 40 hours later, and my journey was complete. As always with my reviews, there will be minor spoilers for the first 30 minutes or so of the game, but nothing that will ruin your experience. With an approach not often seen in the genre and an intriguing presentation to boot, let's dive in to the world of Aegis Rim. Right off the bat, the game grabs and twists you by the meatballs. Citizens are fleeing in terror, an unknown enemy is attacking, and giant robots are summoned in order to take them on. Hell yes! This is how you start a game. You've immediately got my attention just from these opening couple of minutes, and that's arguably a major part of the battle won right there. Props to you, Vanillaware. Shortly after this scene, you're presented with the general structure by which most of Aegis Rim will play out. Like many others of its ilk, the game is defined by several unique routes, but instead of simply playing through a main story in order to trigger particular checkpoints that will take you on a different path, Aegis Rim opts for a more character-driven focus. As evidenced by the title, there are 13 protagonists within this game, each with their own perspectives that contribute to one grand narrative. And even though you won't have all members unlocked at the start, they'll all gradually be made available as you progress through the game. Upon choosing a character, you'll be thrust into... Oh... Mate, this art style. Can I just divert the review a little bit to praise the aesthetic? And wipe my chair? It is a joy to look at, and one of the key reasons as to why I believe Aegis Rim is so engaging overall. The hand-drawn backgrounds and characters meld seamlessly to create an experience unlike any other. There is just so much care, polish and detail in every background, and it truly makes you feel like you're a part of the world, as if you've just been thrown into a fluid painting. And though I will admit that the set pieces themselves are somewhat limited in scope and that you're going to revisit them a lot, I did not mind one bit, because it just allowed me to suck in all of its beauty piece by piece. Now in terms of gameplay, you'll take control of your chosen character, and like in any visual novel, you're attempting to find the triggers which will take you down a specific route. Each protag has a plethora of paths available to them, which each contribute a small fraction of knowledge to either their individual journey or the narrative as a whole. It's also fairly simple to keep track of everything, as you can check this flowchart of events, which will not only allow you to restart from specific points, but will also show you the methods by which certain routes are unlocked, whether that be venturing to a particular point or utilising a specific keyword. And that's a really cool thing about Aegis Rim. Every character has collections of phrases or words which can be used to push the story along. If you're successful, the route will divert and it will contribute to completing the protagonist's story altogether. Now, most of these triggers are fairly self-explanatory. I'd say about 95% of them are easy enough to figure out. However, I can't deny that some of them are a bit finicky. Take this moment near the beginning of Fuyasaka's route, for example, with this bloody cat. My objective here is to approach the furry bastard and give it a treat, but if I get too close to it, then it will run away like a pussy. In order to actually give the treat that will progress the story, I have to talk to the other characters in a very specific way. And if I screw up the sequence of events, it will cause the whole loop to reset, which means you hear the same dialogue repeating endlessly till you manage to figure it out. And it's a minor gripe of mine, because periods like this do take away from that immersion factor that the game in the majority maintains to a high level. Despite that shortcoming though, I veritably enjoyed this structure employed by the game. Because there are so many protagonists available to you, the player is free to pursue the paths of the characters that catch their interest, while also allowing them to figure out the story in the way they want, outside of forced lockouts that require you to complete milestone percentages at certain points. It's as if you're slowly filling in a jigsaw, working on the outside first and slowly filling into the centre to get to that full picture. And may I add, it is quite satisfying to do so. On top of that, should you require more information on certain plot elements, you can always go back to a chronological summary which lays out the main events as you unlock them, along with mystery files to consolidate that knowledge even further. I mean, it sounds awesome, right? But that's not all, because... Whoa. We don't normally get that in the UK. But it sounded pretty good. And I'm not kidding, guys. I would feel dissatisfied if I didn't at least give props to the excellent sound design in this game. Even limited to my shockingly bad TV speakers, I was getting chills from the ambience at times. It was so well done. And it made me wish for the first time that I had a surround sound system of some description. I can only imagine the experience one could have with a full setup. I'm talking subwoofer speakers at each ear, really ramming home those big moments within the game. They seriously blew it out the park with their sound design, and though I can't extend that high praise to the small yet decent soundtrack, I'd say that the two elements as a whole combine into something truly memorable. Yeah, I mean, that's cool and all, but what about those mechs? I want to pilot those. It's a shame, really, that the game missed out on that opportunity. Yes, mate! That's right. Aegis Rim is not just limited to its story mode, it also doubles up with some solid real-time strategy as well. As the name of the game suggests, you have 13 Sentinels under your command that you can deploy for missions, which will normally boil down to tower defense against waves of enemies. Upon choosing a mission, you can choose up to 6 active members who you will take control of, split into 4 classes of Sentinel. Some focus on aerial support, others specialise in close quarters combat, and others rain down hell from afar. So there's a degree of emphasis there on team balance. On top of that, there's a fair amount of customization available for each of your behemoths. Using the in-game currency known as metachips, you can feed these into enhancing your Sentinels, whether that be by souping up their stats directly or unlocking new abilities. You're also free to lay out the active skills of each Sentinel as you see fit, so you can create a well-balanced team with specified setups to counter any situation. Or you can be just like me and spam the hell out of interceptors. When you're happy with your setup and progress to the battle itself, you'll be given a bird's eye view of your field of command, and you simply need to see your mission to the end. Now, the presentation style is admittedly hit or miss, though I would have preferred something a bit more, well, more. I did get used to this as I did more fights, and I have a feeling it was done with performance in mind, as there is a bunch of exploding going on that would likely tank a base PS4's frame rate. That being said, the fights themselves really ramp up the difficulty in the later stages, and it culminates in one of the best final battles I've played in a while. It fits so well thematically, especially when you've experienced the adventures of near on all your protagonists by this point. And the game really deserves props for how it integrates this mode with the wider story. Like I said before, some elements of character progression are locked at certain points, and though some of these conditions are met by playing the other protagonists, some of it is also locked behind these battles. And that's great, because this ensures that the two modes are intrinsically linked. They both contribute to the experience of the other, which feeds into that stellar immersion that I mentioned before. But of course, we've talked about the presentation, the sound design, the RTS gameplay, yet we failed to touch on arguably the most important thing about a game of this type. The element that all visual novels live and die by. So, how's the story? Oh, you haven't figured it out yet? Okay, let me put it as simply as I can. It is awesome! This story is so damn captivating. It's nothing that you haven't seen before. I'd argue that to find a truly unique premise is near on impossible nowadays. What matters instead is the execution, whether the story keeps you gripped from start to finish, and Aegis Rim nails that. I would consistently get that urge of playing through one more path, which inevitably led to play sessions that went on an hour or two more than I intended. When sitting at my desk plugging away at company spreadsheets, I would always find myself looking forward to the evening so that I could fire up my PS4 and play it again. That is the mark of a great game, something that demands your attention. Not only is it executed brilliantly, but the story explores so many interesting themes. There are a multitude of thought-provoking moments within this adventure, instances filled with emotional weight, moral dilemma, and atmosphere. And this is consolidated by the excellent cast of characters. The 13 protags each have their own contribution to the overarching story, and though some of them are notably stronger than others, I thoroughly enjoyed every single one. There was not a weak link among the cast. But I can't deny that they all pale in comparison to the god himself. BJ! No, we're not going there. This is a mature channel. Jokes aside though, the personalities on show were diverse, the interactions between the members would consistently reach the correct emotional pitch, and it was a pleasure to witness them all unfold. And though I can't speak for the Japanese side as I didn't use this option, I also have to give props to the English voice actors here who were consistently solid in their performances. And finally, there is another really small detail that I want to point out too, because I feel it can be easily missed. It's not just the diverse range of personalities on show that make the journey so satisfying, but also the varying ways in which each story is told. In particular, this idea of fitting the theme of each character. For example, one of the characters has a flowchart of events which is scattered all over the place, thus reflecting their psychological state. While another one has their story play out in diary entries, again hitting home on that immersion, this idea of switching perspectives between the different cast members, making each path truly unique. It's small areas of polish like this that all come together so brilliantly in Aegis Rim. It's undoubtedly effective in the way it delivers its story because of things like this. And though it is very science fiction heavy in terms of the terminology that is thrown around, which is normally not my cup of tea, I can't deny that I had an absolute blast. Quite simply, 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim is one of the best experiences I have had in 2021. Actually, scratch that. It's one of the best experiences I have had in half a decade, and I think the main reason for this is that Vanillaware never lost sight of the fact that Aegis Rim is still a visual novel at its core. The narrative is thought-provoking, the characters are deep and diverse, the sound design is top tier, the presentation is gorgeous, and the strategic gameplay is solid. But even though each component is strong in its own right, all of the areas are linked to that story at the center. They combine and positively contribute to deliver on what you look for from a visual novel. And it thus makes Aegis Rim a must-play for any fan of rich and impactful storytelling.